All right, time to kick off the Mr. GLOAT Podcast, Part 3, the finale of The Road to the Undisputed Women's Heavyweight Championship of the World. February the 2nd, 2025, live in the Dort Financial Center in Flint, Michigan, USA, by Commissioner of Michigan Unarmed Combat Commission, promoter Dimitri Salita of the Salita Promotions, matchmaker Steve Clemente, and Lena Kuryliak, and the sponsor of DAZN will be live. Now, the card, ladies and gentlemen, isn't going to be much to talk about. And even though this part 3 is going to be me talking about the fighters that are in this title picture. Now, before we get to that, guys, let's just talk about the card. Now, even though I'm recording this on January the 16th, so it's like January the 16th. So as I'm recording this, that would be like 1 week, 2 weeks, 14, 15, 16, 17. So we're 17 days away as I'm recording this. As February the 2nd, 2025, we're 17 days away for this title match. This title match is going to be a fight that a lot of us might not remember. But smart fans like me are never going to forget. Now, we just hope we won't have any problems in boxing. We just hope, for anyone else out there watching this, we just hope we won't have the same problem like last year in February when Tyson Fury got cut in a sparring accident, if it was a sparring accident, because he got cut. And they were going to have a fight with the undisputed title with him and Usyk in February, but they quickly changed it to May the 18th. And the reason I'm talking about this is that there's been a lot of stuff to point out. And it's not like that back in, it's like the only time that this has ever happened as much as in professional boxing, it's happened a lot. These things has always happened a lot. You think that a title match is going to happen, and then the fight is canceled or the fight is postponed, and it just causes us viewers and fans so much waste of time. We waited for this to happen, and it's not going to happen. And that fight is going to be Danielle Perkins versus WBC, WBF World Heavyweight Champion Clarissa Shields. 15-0, 3 knockouts. Danielle Perkins, 5 wins and 2 knockouts. It's going to be an interesting fight to talk about because you look at it from a perspective. And I'll tell you why. It's the skill. Skill is the way to win. But sometimes in boxing, there can always be a Buster Douglas nearby. And that might be luck. But sometimes it could be a squash match. And those are the two things I'm expecting. It could be a squash match for Shields, or it could be a Buster Douglas upset Perkins. And I might be over-exaggerating on that. The second part, maybe not over-exaggerating this, because every Clarissa Shields fight has always been dominant. Except Hannah Gabriels and Savannah Marshall, even though it's not like how Hannah Gabriels became the first and only woman to knock down Clarissa Shields in round 1 in their first meeting. Because originally in 2023, they were supposed to have a rematch for the undisputed middleweight title in June the 3rd, but originally Hannah Gabriels actually forfeited the fight because, well, this is what I'm afraid of, guys. I'm afraid that Danielle Perkins might do something similar to what Gabriel's did a year and a half ago because on June the 3rd, which was the Shields versus Cornejo fight that Shields won dominantly, the fight was originally supposed to be June the 3rd, Shields versus a rematch against Hannah Gabriels, but the bout was canceled because Gabriels failed a VADA test. So they had a replacement for Cornejo, and that was not a good fight. It was just too much of a squash match. And guys, I can talk about it all day long, but yet again, I've talked about Clarissa Shields' boxing career all my life, and I will repeat it as quickly as I can. But let's just talk about the card first. Now, the card is Joshua James Pagan, 11-0, ranked number 114 in the lightweight as of right now on January the 16th, 2025. His match will be an 8-round fight against a guy named Ronald Ron, a ranked 436 fighter in that weight division. He's 16-7, so he's a journeyman. We have ranked number 118 in the middleweight is Leon Lawson III, taking on Christopher Thompson, a 9-2 fighter that's ranked number 512 in the middleweight. The guy had a 9-0 record, but his last two matches were both defeats, so I think his time has come to an end. And his losses were against great fighters like Giovanni Estella in July of 2023 and in August this year of 2024 against Jesse Rivero, also a 3-0 fighter. So, yeah, his time is up, and I have a feeling Leon Dawson, a guy that lost his first fight in his last three fights 3 years ago against some nobody fighter that became a somebody again, but so there's nothing much interesting for me about that fight. But these other two fights I will find interesting. Skylar Lacey, ranked number 170 in the heavyweight, that is the challenger, has had problems. So from America, he's in Indianapolis, 30 years old. He's boxed for 2 years now, and his fights in his start from 2022 to 2023 haven't been top fights until he took a guy named Antonio Mairez. The guy was 8-0, and they both ended in a majority 6-round draw. Of course, in 2024, he took on a 11-6 jobber, and he got him in round 2, only to take on George Arias, the guy known for losing his first fight against Jared Anderson a couple years ago, back in April of 2023. He comes back a year later to take on this Skylar Lacey, and that fight ended in an 8-round majority decision draw as well. So 2 draws against 2 great opponents, and he couldn't win, but he didn't lose. And now I'm worried that this fight that he's going to fight in 2.5 weeks against ranked number 85, Brandon Moore, a man that also has problems as well, because in May the 18th, 2024, not in Saudi Arabia, but in San Diego around that time during the undisputed heavyweight fight, he lost against Richard Torres Jr., silver medalist of the Japan Olympic Games, for the North American Boxing Federation junior heavyweight title. Nothing good there. He lost by domination in an 8-round fight, got knocked out in round 5 by KO, and his next 2 fights in November the 9th and November the 16th in Colombia were just jobber fights. It was not good. So we just hope this win against Skylar Lacey will get him back in the ranks. But if Skylar Lacey wins it, well, good for him. And that's about it. There hasn't been any other fights posted lately, but I am expecting a couple more fights that are going to happen. But who knows what's going to happen next week. I will report them if there's any other fights that are going to take place that night, but we'll see. Because those are the only 3 card fights I know. Because the last one is the undisputed women's heavyweight title. And even though it's been 9.5 minutes since I just talked about this podcast, so let's just get down to business and talk about Clarissa Shields one more time. So Clarissa Shields, she's 29 years old. She's boxed a lot. And I will point this out. So, guys, the only time that Clarissa Shields has ever scored knockouts in her career are in super middleweight fights and the light heavyweight slash heavyweight fight. So, guys, like I said before, guys, her debut came in November 19th, 2016, when she took on undisputed super middleweight champion former Franchon Cruz de Zern, which was also her debut fight that night. Quisser dominated her in 4 straight rounds, won every single round by the judges. Comes out in March the 10th, 2017, takes on Silvia um, Jabados, a woman from the country of Hungary, and she took care of her in 4 rounds by TKO in the 6-round fight, won the North American Boxing Federation middleweight title, which her second fight because she just lost 8 pounds to be in middleweight. Then comes back in June the 16th that year and goes back to super middleweight, wins the WBC silver super middleweight title. And then August the 4th, 2017. Yeah. Like, her first 4 fights in 9 straight months. She went through 9 months from November the 19th, 2016 to August the 4th, 2017. That's less than a year in 4 professional fights. And her 4th fight was for the IBF and WBC World Super Middleweight title. And she won against Nikki Adler, an undefeated 16-0, and she won by a round 5 TKO. That would be her final knockout for a long time. In under 7 years, quite frankly. So what does she do in 2018? Well, nothing really. She takes on undefeated Tori Nelson, goes 17-0-3 on her, and dominates the 10-round fight. Every judge scored. And then, like I said before, guys, on June 22nd, 2018, as I just said minutes ago, early in the video, Hannah Gabriel was the first one to knock out Clarissa Shields, as she did in the first round. Clarissa Shields did try her best to actually recover from that knockout in the first round. She came out and she proved herself. Even though the first round was pretty tough for what it was, and even by round 2, Clarissa Shields managed to recover, even though it didn't stop Hannah Gabriels from putting in a hard-fought work in round 3 on her at the time, and even though I did believe that she did got round 3 in the bag, so, but this is the moment when things got crazy. And even though I did saw her dominate round 10, which was another round that Hannah Gabriels won, so technically the score was pretty lopsided for a fight. Like, Hannah Gabriels did prove some points in the fight. I gave the scorecard 96-93 after that fight. Shields was dominating round 4 through round 9 easily, and Hannah Gabriels found nothing. And it just goes to show you guys that you have to finish Clarissa Shields off early in the fight, but if you give her too much time to recover, she's going to hurt you in the later rounds. And that's what happened to Daniel Dubois. Like, he never capitalized on Alexander Usyk after he gave him that controversial low blow in round 5. After the round was over, they went 4 more rounds from round 6, round 7, round 8, and round 9 with Alexander Usyk going to town with him. So Dubois didn't even capitalize on nothing. He was assuming that he won the fight, but he didn't even try to fight back even after that low blow. And he even reported in the post-fight that he didn't win the fight. Because we know he didn't win the fight, but he said he did. It's ridiculous. And even though Hannah Gabriels did prove a point that day against Clarissa Shields, that just because you're unstoppable doesn't mean you're the best. And Shields had to prove that to everyone. And by the way, guys, that fight was also for the IBF World Middleweight title that same night. So, and also the WBA belt was also on the line that day as well. So yeah. So she wins her first belts and goes downtown to fight against Hannah Rakim, on November the 11th, 2018. And mostly Christine Hammer vacated her WBC middleweight belt to put it on the line for Clarissa Shields and Hannah. And that fight was won by 10 rounds, easy. Femke Hermans in December the 8th, 2018, 1 month, sheesh, how many weeks was that? Like she went from November the 11th, 2018 to take on Hannah, dominates 10 rounds, and then by the, wait, how many days was that after that fight? Like, this is crazy. Like, November the 17th to December the 8th. Like, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that was like 3 weeks. Clarissa Shields won one fight, and then 21 days later, after November the 17th, goes on December the 8th to take on Femke Hermans and also dominates another 10-round fight. And if you viewers didn't think this was crazy, this was during a time when Christine Hammer was already trying to put out some excuses because she already had an injured arm, injured this, and she tried to recover from this, from doing snowboarding and such, and she tried to do this. And like this was during the time when they were trying to build up Christine Hammer to give up her WBO belt so she can fight undisputed for the middleweight against Clarissa Shields. And guys, when I watched that fight, it was a pretty tough fight, but it was not a really good fight, to say the least. Like, it was a pretty, it was just too much. Like, after the first round was pretty close betwixt her and Christine, like, the fight was just too dominant. I just couldn't talk about it as much, and the fight ended without a whimper to talk about. It was crazy. And that made her undisputed middleweight. But then, guys, came the obvious. Now, in October the 5th, 2019, is when they were scheduled that Clarissa Shields was going to go down to under like 150 or so pounds to fight in the super welterweight division and fight for WBC and WBO champion. Just keep that in mind. That's what they did. And the ring middleweight was on the line, question mark. But yet again, this is the moment when they had everything on the line. Like this, and just keep this in mind, guys. The middleweight titles that Clarissa won were inaugural because her win against Hannah Gabriels was actually the inaugural belt that day when Clarissa won that fight. They even had any other title belt on the line that day were also on the line. So Clarissa Shields was taking inaugural titles that never existed, and she won. It's just crazy that she's still holding on to that IBF World Middleweight belt to this day, and no one hasn't even taken it off her since. That is until December the 13th, 2024, when Kay Scott got a taste of her medicine against Desley Robinson. But I don't want to talk about it because it just goes to show you how a 40-year-old stupid Australian woman thought she was the best. And yeah, she's a bum. But yeah, like I said before, guys, it was just crazy how these titles never existed. Like the WBC and WBO super welterweight title, well, mostly super welterweight titles, barely did exist, just existed just for some years. So it's crazy. But of course, guys, the fight would be canceled on October the 5th because the member of Ivana's team knocked out at weigh-ins. I don't know what happened. I don't know if there was a press conference. That's what it says on Topology.com. On Topology.com, it stated that a member of Ivana's team was knocked out in weigh-in. So we don't know if there was a brawl, but I'm going to look up footage for that and see if there is information about that. But all we know is that's how the fight was canceled. So they rescheduled it for January the 10th, and Clarissa Shields won that belt. She won it fair and square, and that's how it is. But then This is the moment when she decided to take a break for a long time because she never came back to the ring again until March the 5th, 2021, when she took on Maria Eva Takari, which is a reason because it took them 14 months because after January the 10th, 2020, months later, COVID came. And she had to fight at the time in that arena, which wasn't crowded at the time. Well, it was crowded, but we'll talk about not crowded in a little bit so you viewers will understand what I'm talking about. She defeats Eva Makari, and that's it. And then she, on June the 10th, 2021, she fights in the MMA of PFL, and then she fights again in October that year and loses her first fight by split decision. And then she comes back in January 29th, 2022 to fight against Emma Cousin for her middleweight titles. But the fight was postponed due to COVID restrictions. So they had to wait 1 week until February the 5th for that title. And this was during the moment when Savannah Marshall and Krista already had their talks that they were going to have a rematch because after Savannah Marshall was the only woman in amateur boxing to defeat Krista Shields, now they're going at it in professional. So Savannah Marshall took the WBO belt away from her some years ago, and now they're going to try to fight it again. So Carissa doesn't have every title belt. She's an undisputed super welterweight and former undisputed middleweight at this time. She defeats Emma Cousin, and then they come up on October the 15th, 2022, which originally they were supposed to have a fight around September, but after having controversies, this or that, about Alicia Baumgartner, Michaela Mayer that same night, so there was a lot of this or that. I will say though, guys, Savannah Marshall did put some good stuff in that fight. I will say Savannah Marshall did put a good show on Carissa Shields, proving that she's not just the best. And even though Savannah Marshall did come back strong from round 6 and round 7, and then round 9 and probably round 10 to win out the rounds, but yet again, 96 to 94 wasn't enough for her to win that fight. Carissa won it. One judge had the same judge as well, but two others had 97 to 93. But I will give credit. Savannah Marshall did prove herself there, and I give her respect for what she did. She would take on Cruz Dezern on July the 1st, 2023 for the undisputed super middleweight title, and she would win by majority decision. So, but ever since then, for a year and a half, Savannah Marshall hasn't fought since. And as for Franchon Cruz, well, she gets her titles back sometime later for reasons after she defeated Shadicia Green in December the 15th, 2023. Yeah, and now the super middleweight is losing females. But for Carissa Shields, she makes it big. She comes out, and like I said before, guys, they were supposed to have a rematch with Hannah Gabriels, but they had Marcelo Cornejo taking over for her. Blah, blah, fight's over. And then in July the 27th, oh yeah, and by the way, they would also have a match between that. On February the 24th, she fought against a woman named Kesley DeSantis in PFL versus Bellator, which she won by split decision. So another good win for Carissa Shields. She's now 2-1 in her MMA career. I don't think she's good at MMA, but she does try her best. So doing different things. So she did say to Joe Rogan that she's not really being that serious in MMA, but trying to do stuff differently. So I gotta give her credit for that. Guys, I talked about the Vanessa LePage fight, or LaPaz Johannesian, is which some people call her. I talked about that fight of how LePage had problems. She just couldn't go forward as much. Like Shields was throwing everything at her, and then during the second round, it seemed like Vanessa was gonna do the offensive work on Carissa Shields, and she was dodging and ducking every punch like Mike Tyson, and she got a taste of her medicine because of that, and gets knocked down 3 times, and that's how the fight ended. Like, there's nothing much to say about it. And even though when the commentators talked about that, her giving her the merchandise and the WBC title, they did talk about her getting the WBF title. I don't know why. And then they talk about how she got the WBO World Light Heavyweight title. and them saying that it was, I think it was an error, but they also talk about how she became one of the first to ever hold that distinction since Sugar Ray Leonard defeated Donnie Long in 1988 when he was the super middleweight and light heavyweight champion. Which is kind of crazy that commentators pointed that out when seeing that Carissa Shields did the same thing for how Sugar Ray Leonard did that. Wait, was it 1988? I think it was 1987. Um, but yet again, when looking at the fight, for all due to respect, um, like I said before, it's pretty interesting for the time being because, like, for everything coming down. Where's his record? Ah, there's his record. Wait, was it 1980? Yes, it was 1988. Got it. Yeah, he actually held the distinction of winning the super middleweight and light heavyweight title against Donnie Lalonde. Interesting. Interesting win for Sugar Ray Leonard. And I'm surprised they even pointed that out after Carissa Shields is a light heavyweight and world heavyweight, which makes her a two-time weight class in one night. Now she's a five-time world weight class champion, even though some online said that she's a four-time weight class. And it's even crazy because some information stated that technically it was supposed to be a light heavyweight title because on BoxRec, when clicking on the wiki site, it stated that the two titles say heavyweight, but one says light heavyweight. So they believe that it was an error and the fight should have been all light heavyweight. But yet again, it is what it is. But the weight classes are really confusing when you don't know the information. So I won't get into that because, like I said before, I've talked too much about Carissa Shields. So let's just ignore it. Let's just ignore it. So, guys, the last person. So that's all of Carissa Shields. The last information I will talk about is Danielle Perkins. So Danielle Perkins is a basketball player, and it stated that several years ago, she went shopping at one point in a shopping store at one point, and when she was exiting the store in a shopping cart, it stated that a car hit her, and it caused her major injuries at the time. She fell in depression. She had problems, and then she got her way out in the mentality to recover from that by becoming a boxer. As a former basketball player, she's 6 feet tall, 72 reach advantage. Not something to talk about, even though Carissa Shields is a 68 reach advantage, 6'8". She's an orthodox, but Danielle Perkins is a southpaw fighter. So that does make things a little bit interesting there that we'll see two different styles. But guys, when reviewing Danielle Perkins' career, I do find a lot of problems to look at. So guys, I couldn't find information of her debut fight at the moment. Well, mostly her first fight was against Monica Harris, which we do have their second rematch, which we'll get to that in just a moment. She did got her first win against Monica Harrison, a woman that was 2-0-1 undefeated, and Danielle took care of her, went 4 rounds in a 2-minute fight. She even knocked out her opponent in round 3 and then got her in round 4 and dominated every round. And it was a piece of cake round, perfect fight. It was a good win for her. And the thing was, guys, even though Carissa Shields was a young female that came into boxing, Danielle Perkins is 37 years old when coming in to the sport in her debut on August the 20th, 2020. And so at that age, it's crazy. Just like Kay Scott, it's just ridiculous. So what makes this moment more funny for me to talk about is that this would be the only time that they would actually show us this. Because Danielle Perkins would later take on Princess Harrison, a young female that has been out of the boxing ring for a while. Harrison had her first debut against a first fighter that was 0-1 in her career in July 20, 2019. And Harrison finished her in 14 seconds of the first round. So great debut. So she comes back in December 3rd, 2020. And I will say though, guys, the environment of that fight was crazy. I love how the fight took place because this was during the time when the COVID virus came, so there's no crowd attendance other than commissioners and people coming here. And guys, when you watch the fight of Princess Harrison versus Danielle Perkins, the environment of the building and where they were behind a gas station and a boxing gym where like seeing the area like this fight took place in the building called the Wild Card Boxing in Los Angeles, which was actually a boxing gym near outside in an outside venue near a boxing gym, almost like near a gas station. It was pretty dang awesome. I actually like the environment. And as for the fight itself, guys, the fight was too easy to look at. Like, I kind of did find it hilarious that the announcer was announcing the fighters. They announced Princess Harrison as 1-0 with one knockout, but then they also announced Harris. They also announced Perkins was also 1-0 with one knockout, but that's not true. She's 1-0 with zero knockouts. So the reason why the announcer thought Danielle Perkins had one knockout in her first professional fight, we'll never know. But yeah, the fight went on dangerously. It was an easy fight. She was, for the record, guys, Perkins was putting in good offensive work, but the thing was, her slow stature and considering that her body weight at the time wasn't really a fast moving object. And for female boxing as big, I think it's a really tough thing because even though she's a 6 foot tall basketball player, she did put herself in competition. She was hurting her opponent really much. And even after the end of round four, you think to yourself, why would you even let this woman continue? It was a 6 round fight. She was throwing out combinations after combinations, hurting her opponent. And even coming into the end of the fifth round with only 20 seconds left, after hurting her opponent more in the later of that fifth round, the referee would stop it because she had nothing to do. She wasn't fighting back, and to be honest, she wasn't really trying. Um, but yet again, she proved herself. But when looking at this fight again, guys, I did read the comments by YouTuber Ring City USA, which was the video he uploaded of this video. And there were some comments that made a lot of interesting comments because a lot of these comments are like 2 weeks old and some are a few days old right now. And people are really starting to realize that Carissa Shields is going to have an easy time with this because Shields is a more aggressive and fast fighter, while Perkins is not really good at knockout power. And look at this fight, it's crazy. It's even crazy that one YouTuber named this YouTuber that goes by the name of Torre Teize, Easy Easington, he made an interesting comment on this video stating, "This is my first time ever seeing a female heavyweight. I mean, who can she challenge for the title, and are there enough female heavyweight contenders?" When looking at it, guys, that's the problem. There's not a lot of females that really care about being in the dangerous sport. They would rather be a basketball player or something else, just like how Vonda Ward and many other females have done in their time. So, I don't know. And it's even crazy because some people were even making a lot of interesting comments of how female heavyweights are just not getting a lot to it because like there's a lot of lower class females out there and a less contenders out there in boxing, but you do have to understand, guys, even for a lot of heavyweights out there, female heavyweights are the hardest to find. Even super middleweights and middleweight fighters are really rare to find. Like only autumn weight, minimum weight, from to super welterweight are the only time that you'll see a lot of females competing in competition. When it comes to middleweight, super middleweight, light heavyweight, and 0% of cruiserweights, and mostly bridgerweights because no one will care about that, and heavyweights, those are the only divisions that you won't see a lot of female boxers in those divisions. So, yeah, reading the comments of people and just seeing this, you do realize that this might be a huge squash match. Um, but even though people and the commentators do try to um, be 100% nice to Perkins because they believe that she can do an amazing job and they do try to believe her. They don't want to throw out horrible comments like people on YouTube do when they make comments. And I do try to give credit that the commentators are trying to give a praise to Danielle Perkins. They even talk about the story about her and the accident and the car accident when she got hit by a car. So you do gotta give Danielle Perkins for making it there because of that. She had to prove herself. And guys, even back in March the 5th, 2021, is when she would make her third professional fight. And Danielle Perkins would have a rematch for the WBC Silver Heavyweight title against Monica Harrison. Harrison is offering a rematch on March the 5th, 2021 for the inaugural WBC Silver Heavyweight title, as this is the match. And fun fact, this match is in the same arena where Carissa Shields defeated Maria Eva Dakari for the undisputed super welterweight title. So that right there is history, if you say the least. The only thing I will say though, guys, there were barely a little bit of crowd attendance that day. And the fight went on as expected. Like the first seconds of the fight is when Danielle did stumble and trip when she tried to throw a jab, and that kind of messed her up. But everything else in the fight was decent. Like her body and her stature, like she was 190 pounds at the time. Like keep this in mind, guys. Danielle Perkins was only 195 and a quarter pounds in the first fight in August against Monica. Princess Harrison in December, she was 198, the heaviest of her career, and then 196 and 3/4. She goes to 8 rounds the distance. All three judges scored 80-72, favoring Danielle to win this fight. Like this fight was such a piece of cake that she just took to school on this woman. The thing is, these two ladies that Danielle Perkins fought against were girls that were over 200 pounds, and they were not really tall fighters because of that. So Danielle managed to take on these big Humpty Dumpty, like that's what how big these females are. It's crazy. And surprisingly, Danielle won. So it seemed like she had what it takes, but like I said before, there's not a lot of heavyweights out there in boxing. So you can tell that there were some problems. So what happens? Well, by March the 5th, 2021, that was her last fight. She would come back again until March the 1st, 2024, where she would have her first match after 3 years against a nobody named Tamia Nagli. Now, I couldn't find the video or anything else, but all I do know is that she's 178 pounds at this time, so Danielle worked out a lot at the time, so good job for her. The fight ended in 1 minute 42 seconds by second round TKO when it stated that Nagy was down 3 times in the second and the fight ended. So, great win for her. But guess what happens next, guys? On July the 27th, also the same night, same venue where we have Carissa Shields winning the heavyweight titles against Vanessa LePage, we had these girls. Now, guys, the fight that night was a really quiet night because a lot of fans were not there at the time to watch this against her toughest fight to date, Christiana Fahey. Now, Christiana Fahey was a tough fighter. Her first 2 fights, one in 2021 and one in 2022, were fights by first round and second round TKO from the country of Ghana. She comes to America in July 2023 against Mary Casamasa, and this fight went 6 rounds by split decision. People believe she won the fight, but Mary won the fight. She was also 2-0. She's still undefeated today. And it was upset for Fahey because it seemed like she was never going to get another push again. But even though that was a middleweight fight, she gained over 9 pounds to fight against Danielle Perkins. And Perkins was 175.5 pounds that night. Now, the fight went on pretty decent. Like, the first round was an easy win for Fahey. She put a lot of offensive work at the time, and for some reason there was times that Perkins was backing against the ropes in some of the time, and it was an easy win for the first round. But then round two was another round that seemed like a really dangerous affair. Like Perkins managed to attack her opponent. There's times that she was being taken to school at that time, but round two was another decent round. And even after round two was over is when the real bloody mess came, when realizing the bloodiness. I love that Daniel Perkins' trainer decided to not give her a stool to sit down. She decided to stand up like James Braddock in the Braddock movie. So good job for them. I love it that they made her stand up in every single 1 minute round. At this moment, by the end of round two, Fahey is already having a bloody nose for some reason, and it would even get worse by round three when she was getting hurt so much. Don't get me wrong, Fahey was landing good combinations of her own, but there weren't a lot to it than Perkins. Perkins easily won round two and round three, and by the end of that round, she gets back into the corner. She's sitting on a stool. Daniel's not. Even the doctor checks her and tells her open her mouth and say to see if she's okay or not. And seeing as she had a bloody nose, like she was bleeding out every single bit. It was dangerous. But you want to know what made this fight even more harder? Come round four, and Daniel Perkins was putting in another good effort of punching and abilities. But the thing was, her stance and her slow technique and skill in moving her head and dodging was just not good. She was doing a good job, but with 50 seconds left of the fourth round is when Faye came out of nowhere, throwed a heavy right punch connected to Perkins. I'm surprised that she didn't get knocked out by that. Comes back and then backs up, goes forward and throws another right punch and hurts her. Throws multiple punches. The end of that round was so crazy that she gave a lot to Perkins. It was actually another good round for Fahey, and I believe she won that fourth round. But the real moment is when it all came to round five. They showed us a lot. There was a moment in round five where it was all or nothing. Like Fahey was charging at her early in the round. She was hurting out her opponent. And there was a moment in that end of the fifth round where she came out of nowhere. She was just throwing great combinations, but then later, with 45 seconds of the fight, she hurts out her opponent. Fahey covers herself, and friggin' Daniel throws a low blow at her with a left punch below the belt, throws an uppercut, and I was surprised that she decided not to throw a barrage of punches. That's the problem with Perkins. She just couldn't handle that. She just doesn't know how to capitalize on it. She hurt her opponent enough, but Fahey was still connecting punches even though she was bleeding a lot from the nose and the mouth. But by the end of round five, it was another good round. But to be honest, it looked like Fahey was going to win the round, but Perkins came back at the end and stole the round from Fahey, in my opinion. And that was it. We come to the sixth and final round, and guess what happens? They put in a dangerous work of skill. The thing was, it was a sloppy fight. There was not a lot of pizzazz in this fight, which goes to show you that Perkins did had a lot of weakness problems in this fight. But this was a great win for her. The score was 58-56, but two of the judges had it 50-60. One judge had it 60-54, but the other two had 59-55. Some judges believe it would have been a draw, but yeah. But to be honest, I did believe Perkins won the fight, but it was crazy. But you know what's crazy? They announced the winner, and surprisingly, this is the craziest part. Now, this was before the night of the champion with Corsa Shields and LePage. So they announced the winner. Daniel Perkins the winner. Decisive lopsided decision. And Perkins is talking to the camera. I'm calling out the WBC champion. I'm calling out you, Corsa, because she already realizes that Corsa is going to win tonight. And guess what she does? By domination. And surprisingly, at this moment, I was like, why would you want to call out your opponent like that? Like, she has no chance of defeating Corsa Shields after what happened that same night. By the way, the arena was so dang empty. I'm surprised that there was just no way. Like there was no way I would ever see that. It was just a real sloppy fight for Daniel Perkins. She was barely taken to school in that fight. So, yeah, this might be an easy fight to talk about because at this moment, and they were even thinking that she was going to call out Lonnie Daniels, a former IBF World Heavyweight Champion as well. So, yeah, both girls won the fights that night, but here's my thing. They come out February the 2nd, 2025. We have the WBO and WBA titles on the line. How the heck are those titles on the line in the first place? I do find it ridiculous that these titles are on the line, but at the end of the day, I do question myself, should this be accepted? Because at this moment, these titles are the inaugural titles in boxing. So I do question myself that there's something wrong here because the IBF being vacant and now fighting that night, and the WBC belt is being defended. The WBF is also on the line tonight as this same show. So I do question myself that there might be something going on here, but I'm not going to question it as much because it's an undisputed title. But here's my problem. Guys, Daniel Perkins has a lot of problems. She comes back boxing at 41 years old, and at this time she was 41. So now she's 42 years old, um, just fighting for everything here because at this moment, Clarissa Shields is 29 years old. She'll be turned 30 this year in about some time. Perkins is 42 years old, and at this moment, that's just ridiculous. This is when Mother Time should get the best of you. Like, Clarissa Shields, if this is going to be a Buster Douglas win for Tyson here, this will be the most ridiculous fight. I'll be really shocked if Clarissa Shields does not win. Because at this moment, I do question myself that there's something that might be amiss here. Because guys, I only watched these fights against Daniel Perkins because I wanted to see how Daniel can match up with Clarissa Shields. And after watching this 6-round fight with her against Christiana Fahey, it's not good. It's just going to be an easy win for Clarissa Shields, and mostly just seeing everything here is just going to be an easy win. Now, there is a lot of comments on YouTube, people. Like, there's a lot of people making comments on YouTube about Daniel Perkins' boxing fights, even the ones that were released a few years ago. And it just goes to show you that there's going to be a lot of problems because people can already tell that Clarissa Shields has an easy win. Like, Perkins is good. She has a heart. She had the strength. She had the mental to recover from her depression after the incident. But is that enough for her to go 10 rounds the distance with Shields? Is it even enough to win? She's just not quick enough. Like, Perkins' stamina is just not that good. She has problems. And, like, guys, I really don't know what to say anymore because at this moment, Perkins has the heart to call out the fight, but this is the moment when you realize yourself, is she going to make a 180 and start postponing or canceling this fight? I hope not. I do want to see this fight, and I just hope we do. It just depends on how this fight is going to end. So I think at the end of the day, you look at it from my perspective, I do see that if a woman named Christiana Fahey can throw out amazing punches like that, even if they weren't knockout power punches that could not take out Perkins, I do have a feeling that if Clarissa Shields does have some good power to knock out Vanessa LePage, I could see her going 10 rounds the distance and giving Perkins a hard time. That's what I'm expecting from this fight, but yet again, I do see a good chance that it might be a Buster Douglas thing here. So, but we do have to wait and see when that fight is over. So at the end of the day, we have to wait and try to understand what we're getting ourselves into. So while the time is coming, I think it's probably for the best to end this stream, and we'll just wait for the next couple weeks, and we'll see who the winner of this fight will be. So with that being said, thank you for watching this podcast. February 2nd, it's going to be an interesting fight to see if how Shields is going to take care of Perkins. We wish you viewers best of luck for the inaugural undisputed women's heavyweight champion. And with that being said, thank you for watching, and the Fox Wolf is out.